Michael Wilson had another big performance in Week 18. Is it time to start valuing him as a top 20 Dynasty receiver? We'll get into that and more next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is the Fantasy Football Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano. And on today's show, we're taking a look at the biggest winners and losers across the NFL in Week 18. And let's start with some wide receivers. Michael Wilson just continues to put up big stats every single week. I thought he was awesome again this week. 5 catches for 99 yards and a touchdown. He also had another 40-yard reception taken away because he had 1 foot out of bounds, came back inbounds. My question to you, Fabs, we know that he's a big winner. Where and how are we valuing him in our dynasty leagues moving forward?
It's hard to say right now because I don't know who the quarterback of the Cardinals is going to be next year. Now, if for some, reason it's still Jacoby Brissett, I'm going to value him pretty highly. This is a kid who's 25 years old. I think he turns 26 next month. What he did was eye-opening. Okay. Think about the fact that he wasn't even on anybody's radar in the first half of the season. Not even on anybody's radar. Harrison Jr. has the appendectomy. He goes out. Wilson's value goes up. People still weren't necessarily starting him at that point. And then all of a sudden he starts blowing up. And then he becomes a league winner in fantasy. He finished with more fantasy points than CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson, which obviously wasn't that hard of a task because J.J. McCarthy wrecked him. Brian Thomas Jr., like all these players, he was better. And Marvin Harrison Jr. finished the fantasy season as a wide receiver at 46. And, Marcus and I have talked about this. I'd kind of like to see him move on. And I don't know if the Cardinals are going to trade him because he's obviously under contract under his rookie deal for a few more years. But Michael Wilson right now might be the better fantasy wide receiver in Arizona. If we've learned anything from the second half of the season, maybe that's an undoubtable statement.
So if you look at July and August ADP from Dynasty League Football, he was the 4th receiver named Wilson being drafted. You had Garrett Wilson at wide receiver 20. You had Roman Wilson at wide receiver 84.
Oh my gosh.
Savion Williams at wide receiver 85. And then Michael Wilson at wide receiver 101. I can continue to come back to this belief that Michael Wilson is just a better player than Marvin Harrison Jr. And it's going to take our brains a little bit to kind of comprehend that because Marvin Harrison Jr. was viewed and called a generational blue chip prospect, right? And it's Wilson who's the better player. He's just a better outside receiver. He does a fantastic job of adjusting the passes. He's a big time playmaker. And I wonder what we should do with him now. I want to go through some receivers who are being drafted in that 20 to 25 range. And you kind of tell me your thoughts. Would you rather have Chris Olave or Michael Wilson moving forward?
Chris Olave. Okay. And it's not to me, that's not close.
Okay. And that's fine. He's currently wide receiver 20. DeVonta Smith, wide receiver 21.
Again, I will answer this with the thought that Brissett remains in Arizona.
Yes.
I might want Michael Wilson more if that's the case.
Well, and the next receiver I'm going to mention, Jalen Waddle. DeVonta Smith and Jalen Waddle are not old. They're both 27 years old.
Right.
But it's kind of, they're past the point where they're young receivers at the same time, right? I don't see their value.
They are what they are, Marcus.
Yeah, they are what they are. Why shouldn't I just rather have Michael Wilson, who's significantly younger? And again, honestly, Fabs, he's the #1 on his own team. And he's 25, so 2 years younger, but he's being valued at wide receiver 52 right now.
I know. And my guess is that when we get the new batch of ADP, that will rise.
He's going to be in the top 30. It's just, can he jump guys like T. Higgins, Jamison Williams, Zay Flowers, Terry McLaurin? I think the answer is a resounding yes.
Yes. I don't know about Zay Flowers. Maybe that's possible. Although Zay, boy, he went off last night. What a game that was. That was maybe one of the most enjoyable games that I've seen all season long. And
disagree. I was rooting for the Ravens, so
I was full of drama. I didn't care who won, man. I kind of was thinking to myself, Loop's going to miss this because it just would encapsulate sort of like the entire theme of the game where just wild things were happening. But Zay Flowers, I don't know that I'd go with Wilson over Zay Flowers, but at this point it's close. And at this point last year, it wasn't close.
Let's talk about another player who is a big winner, not only in week 18, but throughout the season. And that's Alec Pierce. 4 catches, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns, was also ejected from this game late.
And that was kind of chintzy too, man.
It was. Yeah. Alec Pierce is a free agent after the year. He had 1,000 yards this season, 6 touchdowns. He's had at least 6 touchdowns in back-to-back years. For his career, he's averaging like 18 yards per reception. Like, he's one of the best deep threats we have. He's a free agent, and I think he's going to get a massive contract this offseason.
Yeah, I like to see him go somewhere other than where he is right now. Although, I don't know when Daniel Jones will be back. I don't know what the scenario is going to be with him health-wise, of course. What that quarterback situation looks like in Indianapolis. But he was very good. I mean, down the stretch. And this is with quarterbacks who are, not what you would consider to be, great. I mean, for a part of it, he was playing with Phillip Rivers and, Riley Leonard in the game yesterday. But from week 9 to week 18, he was phenomenal. I mean, he averaged over 14 points per game, and he had 5 games with over 17 plus points. And a couple of those games, he did nothing. And that was Rivers. I know one of those games with Rivers, he was great. And the other one, he was terrible. But this kid has got, I don't know if he's going to break out and be, some high-end wide receiver 1 type, but could he land in a situation where he's a really good wide receiver 2? Absolutely. It all depends on where he ends up. If he stays in Indianapolis and Daniel Jones is back next year for the Colts and, he gets back from the injury, Alec Pierce is a wide receiver 2. I don't think he's a high-end wide receiver 2, but he's definitely a wide receiver 2 flex in a lot of dynasty drafts.
I would love to see him end up with, I'm not going to say the Bills because that's what we say for every one of these guys. I've got 2 landing spots. Number 1, the Commanders. They've got a bunch of cap space. Deebo Samuel's going to be gone after this year. McLaurin is into his 30s now. I think having a legitimate deep threat for Jaden Daniels would be awesome.
Yeah, that's a good fit.
And then another one would be New England. You have Stephon Diggs, but he's in his 30s as well.
Yep.
They've got a bunch of cap space, and I think Drake May might be the best deep ball passer in all of the NFL. You give him Alec Pierce, and now you can really open up that offense. I think Alec Pierce is going to be a very sought-after receiver in free agency. His dynasty value is already way up, and I would not be surprised when we get to March, April, if we're seeing him kind of approach the wide receiver 30, wide receiver 35 range in our dynasty leagues.
No, I'm right there with you. A big fan, and I was glad to see him finally get his due because his career has been somewhat up and down and more maybe down than up until this year. And now obviously the quarterback situation while he's been there has been with Anthony Richardson, who's not a great passer, but he finally got a guy in Daniel Jones who, and we forget because it's sort of like out of sight, out of mind. Daniel Jones was really good before he got hurt. Really good. I mean, this is a player who is averaging 17, 18 points per game. And so it was good to see Pierce play. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but playing with a competent quarterback. Well, I'm mentioning Daniel Jones and calling him a competent quarterback after we didn't think maybe he would be the starter, coming into the season. But that's how wild things were. Yeah, I do like Pierce a lot. And I hope those 2 landing spots that you mentioned are pretty good.
One more player that's a big winner for week 18, Colston Loveland, and it's been trending in this direction for a while, Fabs. I'm looking at the numbers right now. Since week 8, he's averaged about 60 receiving yards per game. He's been unbelievable. 5 touchdowns during that stretch. In this game, 6 catches, 94 yards, and a touchdown. we were wondering early season, who is the better dynasty tight end between Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland? Give me Loveland. I at least know whose quarterback is going to be, and he's shown a lot over the last 2 months.
So I liked Warren this season more, and I think for the majority of the season, that was correct. Long term, that's a different story. I still love Tyler Warren. And I think the Colts were a team that was 7-1, 7-2. I mean, they're not that far off from being a competitive team, in the AFC. So they need to figure out what's going on with Daniel Jones, the quarterback situation, et cetera. So I think he'll be fine. And, down the stretch again, I think it was more about the quarterback situation than it was anything Tyler Warren was or wasn't doing on the field. But Colston Loveland is he's that dude. I have been praising the Chicago Bears in terms of the dynasty assets that they have for fantasy managers. When you look at Rome Odunze, when you look at Luther Burden, and when you look at Colston Loveland and Kyle Monengai, that is it's just an absolute cornucopia of dynasty greatness potentially from a fantasy standpoint. When you talk about a running back who could end up being like an RB2 in fantasy, when you talk about two wide receivers, who have wide receiver 2 upside, and maybe Odunze has wide receiver 1 upside. If you're Marcus, you think it's Burden. Colston Loveland has tight end 1 upside long term. And we know Caleb Williams is already a QB1. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch in Chicago. But yeah, Loveland's value is certainly on the rise. And I can't see him being drafted outside of maybe the first 4 or 5 tight ends in a dynasty startup.
No way. All right, Fabs, let's talk about some more winners from week 18, including a couple deep running back stashes. We'll get to that next.
Kicking off the year feeling good is the goal, right? And honestly, hydration is the easiest win. Why I stay on top of these things, my energy, my focus, and my mood, they all level up. But let's be real. Plain water doesn't always cut it, especially when you're grinding through these long days, hitting the gym, or just trying to stay consistent with your health goals. And that's where Drip Drop comes in. It's doctor-developed, proven fast hydration that helps your body and mind work better. Think clearer focus, better energy, elevated mood, even that fresh skin glow. And I've actually been using Drip Drop as part of my daily routine, and it's really a game changer, not just for workouts, but every single day. I really love that it uses a precise ratio of electrolytes and glucose for rapid absorption, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading sports drinks. And actually, it tastes really good. I have gotten into the whole grape flavor of Drip Drop, and I really like it. There are actually 16 original flavors, and there's 8 zero sugar options to choose from as well. Drip Drop's science-backed formula is trusted by firefighters, medical professionals, and over 90% of top college and pro teams because it rehydrates you faster and more effectively than just drinking water alone. They have flexible subscription options, so you're never stuck without it. And whether you're hitting the gym, juggling work, or just staying consistent with your goals. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 20% off. Stock up now, I know I have, at dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action going on almost every single night, the action never slows down, and Prize Picks lets you stay in control. Prize Picks is a daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. There's no drafts, there's no waiting. Just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on Prize Picks is quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate. I mean, I've been using it all season long. It's made watching games more engaging, especially when you're following individual player performances. Like, how about that amazing performance from Ramondre Stevenson for the Patriots yesterday? That was a big one. I love the flexibility, too, that you get with Flex Play, where you can still get paid even if one of your picks misses. Now, the early payouts feature, that's a game changer. If a player starts hot, you can cash out before the game actually ends. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, check out the Everydayer Club. You'll get ad-free episodes to this podcast for just $5 a month. Go to lockedondynasty.supercast.com or check out the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Fabs, let's talk about some more winners from Week 18. We're trying to be positive today because Week 18, for the most part, was fun. Let's talk about Tank Bigsby. And honestly, this is somebody that we mentioned during our Friday show that we were really excited to see in a bigger role. I thought Tank Bigsby looked awesome.
Dude, he's so good.
He is good.
Remember, Tank Bigsby was the reason why Travis Etienne's ADP was where it was back in August, before they ended up trading him. Jacksonville did to Philadelphia. Tank Bigsby deserves to be a number one in this league. Now, maybe he's not a true featured back, like a Saquon Barkley type, but he can get the job done. This is a player that I feel like if you put him in a situation where he's the starter, he can average 13, 14 points per game. Really, a very explosive player, easily. He just needs the opportunity. The problem is he's under contract. So we'll see what happens moving forward. But I will say this, even if he remains with the Eagles, Saquon Barkley's coming off of a less than stellar season. He's had more touches and he's not getting any younger.
Yeah, we don't really buy into handcuffs all that often, although this is a handcuff that I do want. Like if Tank Bigsby's available or you can go out and trade for him, we know Saquon Barkley's injury history. We know how valuable that role is in Philadelphia. I'm with you. Another running back from the NFC East. Actually, we've got three of them today. Tyrone Tracy. Now, we need to mention, there's a caveat when we do this anytime.
Go ahead. I love hearing Marcus crap on the Cowboys. Go ahead.
Well, this Cowboys defense, they gave up 500 plus points for the first time in franchise history.
Join the dark side, Marcus.
You can't get too excited. However, Tracy was really good. And did you see the stat this week that Tyrone Tracy is the only player from the 2024 draft to have at least 800 scrimmage yards this year?
No, I didn't see that. So here's the thing. And maybe this is not good for Cam Scatabo. And I love that dude to death, but the way that he plays football is conducive to injuries. Okay. Tyrone Tracy was good as a rookie. And I know that he smoked the Cowboys. I mean, you put Mosher in the backfield, he's probably going for $125 against that crappy defense. But look at some of the games before that. I know the week before it was Devin Singletary, but he had several games that helped you get to the fantasy playoffs. Tyrone Tracy is a good player. And I wonder that, whoever the coach of the Giants is going to be next season, and maybe it's going to be Mike McCarthy. I would kind of love that. I would love to see him coaching Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors and Theo Johnson, who was sick but had a basketball game the night before. And, Wan'Dale Robinson, if that continues to be a situation, that I think that would be fun. And I would love to see McCarthy, beat up on the Cowboys twice a year as a Cowboys fan who hates Jerry Jones. But Tyrone Tracy is a good player. And so I do wonder if maybe that Scatabo next year, doesn't get 20 touches a game. Maybe it's more like 16 touches a game once he's healthy. And Tracy gets utilized a little bit more in that backfield because he's a good player.
He is a good player. I want to see Tracy get more touches because he's a good receiver. He can make he's one of the things that you see a lot of times, and we'll talk about this with Jaden Blue in a second, is these guys that are really good receivers and they're really good playing out in space. They're not necessarily the most physical runners. That's not the case with Tracy. And this is a guy that was a wide receiver at Iowa who made the switch to running back at Purdue. He doesn't look like a former receiver. He plays with a lot of toughness. Tracy's somebody that I want to have on every single one of my dynasty benches because I do think he's a good player, and I don't trust Cam Scatabo's health at all moving forward. I want to talk about Jaden Blue, who got to play significant snaps for the first time all season with the Cowboys. At one point, he had 71 rushing yards on 5 carries. And then I think he lost yards on 5 straight runs once Dak Prescott left the game. It wasn't a huge game for Jaden Blue. He did get in the end zone. But are you taking anything away from Blue's performance here?
No, the Giants defense has been horrible against running backs all year long. I mean, they were giving up like 5.6 yards per rush for the season, something like that. And listen, if Jaden Blue was a guy that the Cowboys thought that they could utilize more, they would have played him. I mean, he got passed up by Malik Davis on the freaking depth chart. So something's wrong there. And so, right now we don't know who the running back is going to be for the Cowboys. He's like, based on contract, he's the guy, but it's not going to happen.
It won't be him alone.
Whether they bring back Javonte Williams or somehow or another they bring in, it's Breece Hall's probably, pie in the sky, but like a Ken Walker who
somebody
looked great
like that
this week again. And I still am soured about the whole year because he wasn't great at all. He wasn't even good for the most part, but he's so talented. Jaden Blue is still going to find himself at best a number 2 running back. And I don't even know if he's going to be the number 2 running back for this team.
He is extremely young.
I'm not buying into him.
Neither am I. He's extremely young, and you're hoping that he matures. He does have a lot of juice. He's very explosive, but I'm with you. I think don't overreact to one meaningless performance in week 18, but I did think he played well overall. One more running back really quickly. TreVeyon Henderson scored 2 touchdowns in this game. Ramondre Stevenson, I think, scored 3, I believe.
They had 5 touchdowns combined in this game.
Wow. I just think you want to buy into everybody in this New England offense.
Let me ask you a question, though. And we have Henderson as a winner, and he was. I mean, he had over 17 fantasy points. We know how explosive this kid is. Ramondre Stevenson's still a really good running back, and his contract isn't up until 29. Now, I know the Patriots have an opt-out in 27, but like, are you concerned that this is going to be what this backfield is next year as well, where Stevenson's still the starter, and then they're using Henderson, 13 to 15 maybe touches per game. And I mean, this thing went out of control. The Jets are horrible. The Dolphins are horrible. They were, just playing out the stretch. But like, I mean, does that concern you for Henderson's like short-term dynasty value?
No, because I think Henderson is somebody that you want to try to keep in that like 14 to 17 touch range. And he's had a lot of, injuries going back to his time at Ohio State. I do think you want to manage it a little bit. And from a long-term perspective, I think it's great that you're not putting on a bunch of mileage on him early in his career, because you want to have this guy as a top 10 running back for the next 7 years.
So then his dynasty ceiling is RB2.
I don't think it's that low. I think it's more like a low end RB1. But again, maybe it's more, maybe we see him being utilized more as a receiver next year, where Ramondre's been getting a lot of those opportunities this year.
Ramondre Stevenson's a good player. Outside of the fumble issues, that he's had in his career, that's been, somewhat of a problem. He's a really good player. And I do worry about the ceiling for Henderson, at least, for the next year or so. Because, Stevenson's under contract and it's working. The Patriots won 14 games. What they're doing is working. They're not going to break that up.
All right, let's talk about some losers from week 18. And I got a feeling there's
I can't wait for that.
Minnesota quarterback that Babs is going to dog for the 15th show in a row. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. New year doesn't require a new you, maybe just a less burden you. We all carry things that weigh us down or hold us back, and therapy can help you identify what those things are by offering an unbiased perspective to help you better understand your relationships, your motivations, and your emotions. And that's where BetterHelp comes in, making it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist who can help you work through what's holding you back. Maybe it's some fear or pressure or perfection that's been weighing you down. BetterHelp will help you get through it all. All BetterHelp therapists are fully licensed in the U.S. and work according to a strict code of conduct, and they do all the matching for you. A short questionnaire helps you identify all of your needs and preferences, and with over 12 years of experience, they typically get it right the first time. And if you're not happy with your match, you can switch to a different therapist at any time for any reason. So go to betterhelp.com/lockedon, because BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with qualified therapists. Sign up today and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. We are officially in the NFL playoffs, and there's nothing like being in the stands for these big playoff games. The crowd noise, the energy, the cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but there's something different about being in the stands. And the frustrating part is trying to get those tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. But that's where the Game Time app gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack of unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I love that you can see in the app what your view from your seat is going to look like before you buy. And knowing that tickets are backed by the Game Time guarantee gives you peace of mind with every purchase. So take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Fabs, let's run through some losers from week 18. And of course, JJ McCarthy's on the list. I'm not even going to say anything. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
He got hurt again, dude. Like, the dude he's Jackie Paper, man. He's made of glass. And when he plays, he's not good from a fantasy standpoint as a passer. You can't, he is the wrong fit for this offense. He's 100% the wrong fit for this offense. He neutered Justin Jefferson. He neutered Jordan Addison statistically. Same thing with TJ Hawkinson. Sam Darnold was a dud before he went to Minnesota, and look what he turned into, right? You're telling me a guy who was, the 10th overall pick a couple years ago? Like, he's this bad? It was a bad pick for the Vikings. He's a backup quarterback in the NFL. Bring in somebody. Bring in Kyler. Bring in Tua. I don't care who it is. Somebody who can throw the damn ball to the wide receivers. It's funny because Justin Jefferson actually had his best game in a long time yesterday. and McCarthy, McCarthy got hurt. And then it was Max Brosmer in the game. JJ McCarthy is not a good NFL quarterback, folks. I don't care if it's a small sample size. It's enough of a sample size for me to know that if I'm going into next year with Justin Jefferson as my wide receiver 1 and JJ McCarthy is expected to be the quarterback for the Vikings, I don't have Justin Jefferson as my wide receiver 1 because he's not a wide receiver 1 with McCarthy playing. So get McCarthy the hell out of there. He's a backup. Bring in competition. This was one of the best teams in the NFC last year.
And that's true.
And the only thing that changed, I know the offensive line had issues, but the only thing that really changed was McCarthy. And look where Darnold is. Darnold is the first quarterback to win 14 games in back-to-back years since Tom flippin' Brady. So McCarthy needs to go. And if he's back, I am out on every Viking. I don't care who it is.
Couple other guys from this week. Rico Dowdle, 9 touches for 30 yards, 3 fantasy points. Also had a huge fumble in this game. I don't want to say lost the game for Carolina, but made it very hard for them to win. We should remember this Carolina backfield. They have Chuba Hubbard under contract.
Yeah.
They drafted Trevor Etienne. I believe it was in the 4th round this year. And oh, by the way, Jonathan Brooks, who they spent a 2nd round pick on, he is eligible to play next year. Now he's coming off his 2nd ACL injury in a row. And who knows what that's going to look like. But Rico Dowdle is a free agent who I believe is 27. He might be 28 next year. I still think Dowdle is going to be fine. But I don't think the last few weeks of the season have been particularly kind to him.
No, he's been bad. He's failed to score double digits in each of his last 3 games and 4 of his last 5. And in the game where he did score double digits, it was barely over 10. I think it was about 12 points. And listen, we were talking about how great he was early in the season. Listen, he was awesome. But he got so many touches in a short span of time. I think it just burned him out. And look what happened to him. At one point he was losing work to Hubbard. And then it became closer to a split in terms of that backfield. And now you said it. I don't really factor in Jonathan Brooks because I don't know what he can still be after having multiple knee injuries.
It's just worth noting that he's on this team. Yeah.
But Rico Dowdle may not be in Carolina next year. I don't know. Chuba Hubbard's still a good back. Yeah, he struggled to start the season. He's still a good back. He was one of the biggest busts in fantasy football, by the way.
Yeah.
He wasn't Brian Thomas Jr. or Justin Jefferson, but he wasn't very good. Yeah, so Dowdle's value takes a hit, and he's not a young running back either. I know he hasn't had a ton of work in his career, but I do wonder if he's even going to find a starting job next year in the NFL. Maybe he does, but I don't like what I saw down the stretch from him.
A couple other guys really quickly, and 2 former first-round receivers. Emeka Egbuka started the year off really, really hot, has faded down the stretch. Now, I don't know how much of that is due to the mid-season hamstring injury, but he had just 1 catch on Saturday night against the Panthers. I'm not concerned long term. I'm going to rank him really high this offseason. It's been a rough 2 months for him.
He failed to score more than 9 points in all but one of his last 8 games.
Yeah.
And he had 1.8 points yesterday. And this comes after the first 4 or 5 weeks where he was literally the wide receiver 3. So we know that he's got it in him to be that guy. Will Mike Evans be back? Will he retire? We're not sure. He's a free agent. Chris Godwin gets another year older. Also, I do wonder this. We talk about how Liam Cohen went into Jacksonville and turned Trevor Lawrence into the stud quarterback that the Jaguars were hoping that he would be when he came out of Clemson so many years ago. Is Liam Cohen not being in Tampa Bay the reason why Baker Mayfield, to a degree, really wasn't that great in the second half of the season this year from a fantasy perspective? It's very possible. And Marcus and I are going to talk about that kind of stuff because it's so important. Kevin Stefanski, we just find out, just got fired today as well. So he'll get a head coaching job someplace else, like in a heartbeat. There's no question about that. But that is huge. And you really do wonder, if Cohen leaving really hurt Baker Mayfield and hurt that offense down the stretch. And I wouldn't be surprised if Todd Bowles was gone too, because not for nothing, he's kind of a mid head coach. The same thing, with Raheem Morris, he's a mid head coach. Zach Taylor, he may not even be a mid head coach. He got the Bengals to the Super Bowl once. Other than that, hasn't worked out. He needs to be gone too.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Check out the Locked On NFL podcast for your second listen. 2 shows every single day. One in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the Everydayer Club on LockedOnDynasty.supercast.com. Follow Fabs on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.